Believe it or not, this guy actually has friends.
Nice.
This is Scotty G and Friends on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Kicking off your 1 o'clock hour. You hear the music, you know what that means. Our good friend Kurt Helin, NBC Sports and ProBasketballTalk.com, will join us. And we'll chat all things Utah Jazz with him, get his thoughts on the trade. Trade took place right after, or actually, no, did we talk to Kurt Helin about the trade last week? I can't remember if it happened before or after our weekly conversation with Kurt. But either way, the Jazz have struck gold, and the long run of losing games has, well, hopefully it continues throughout the course of this year. But next year, you can see the Jazz are all in on trying to turn this thing around. Kurt Helin joins us. Kurt, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me in.
Always a pleasure to catch up with you. All right, so the Jazz are taking some heat for playing their guys, but pulling them in the fourth quarter. It almost seems like they would take less heat if they just didn't play them at all.
Yeah, I guess it's funny. It brought up the weird. I find it like I'm trying to think of a word I can use on the radio, but let's just call it organic fertilizer.
Okay, yeah.
Phrase that is ethical tanking. Like there's some ethical way to tank. Look, I don't think personally, I don't think the Jazz or frankly anyone is doing anything unethical. The job is to get the players you need to win. They are in position to get a high draft pick in a deep draft. You focus on that. And like you just said before I came on, next year is when everything flips. The culture flips. Everything spins. And, some nights you're going to still win these games because I don't know what's going on in Miami. That's a whole different conversation.
Yeah.
But look, man, this is going to be the way of the NBA. I know the league is, and tanking is going to be the big topic of the end of the season here because you've got about a third of the league now jockeying for position. But in a sport where a single elite player makes so much of a difference, let alone having a couple of them, then you got to do what you can do to get those players, right? Like you have to do whatever it takes to get those players, and the draft remains still the best way to land those kind of elite talents.
So the acquisition of Jaren Jackson and what he means to the Jazz, imagine him being on the court with Walker Kessler. Let's just say for the sake of argument, Walker Kessler, the Jazz match, whatever he gets in restricted free agency. You have Keontae George and his development and where he's at. Ace Bailey playing the two, Lauri Markkanen. What does that team look like in terms of wins and losses?
You're still in the ridiculously deep West, which will shake out a little next year, but still will have a bunch of teams at the top. But if you're talking, I would say you've got a shot at getting fifth or sixth, but probably sixth and avoiding the play-in, and it might still be a 7 or 8 just because the 7 or 8s are still pretty good in the West. But somewhere between 5 and 8, 5 and 9 would be my first guess. I off the top of my head, because the team is beyond just having Kessler, Markkanen, and Jaren Jackson along the front line. Obviously, you've got George and Bailey looked good last night when he was asked to go get some buckets. He's starting to find his footing in the league. As this starts to come together and you draft whoever you draft and you develop these players, it just becomes like you're building something that's going to be good now and potentially very good down the line. They're going to win a lot of games next season. This is a more than 500 team. If I were guessing, I would say closer to mid-40s and up. Mid-40s maybe, though, seems about fair.
I just think that there's so many people that are on cloud nine after that acquisition because it's not just about the player, who's a phenomenal player, but it just signifies that the end is here. And I think that's where Jazz fans are just fired up because it's like, okay, we don't really care who it was. It's just signifies that finally the ugliness could be coming to an end here.
And I think that there's something you can only bottom out like that for so long before your fans really do get understandably frustrated and not want to see this again. And I think that not only did they time this out about right, and 2 or 3 years, Houston did a 3-year plan. I think that's about the max you can go for these kind of things. But what Utah did, what the Angels did at the deadline, was a perfect example of how to hit the accelerator and move out of this, as opposed. I'm not blaming Washington for what they did because they bought cheap, right? Like they went discount bargain shopping and got Trae Young and Anthony Davis for, frankly, pennies on the dollar. But those are – I don't know how much those guys – if everything goes perfect, those guys help you win a lot. But if there's any kind of injury, suddenly you're not there. And granted, they're trying to get somebody in this draft as well. They've got some nice young – Alex Sarr is a good young player. George is a good player. Kaishan George is a good player. So, like, there's some talent there. But, like, I love the way Utah hit the accelerator. Like, we got to get out of this. This is how you do it. Now you go into next season with a legitimately good team.
You think in terms of what the Jazz gave up, do you feel like they came out on top on that trade? I know everybody wants to declare winners and losers for every trade, but do you think it was a solid the amount they gave up was worth the return?
Yeah, because I think you're going to get him in a position where he can thrive. He's been asked to do – Jaren Jackson Jr. has just been asked to carry enough of an offensive load, and he's capable of it, but enough of an offensive load because of the Ja Morant situation and everything. Look, he was their best offensive player and best defensive player. I was having this conversation with a scout earlier in the season. Like, how many teams could you say their best offensive player is their best defensive player? And there's only a handful of the Giannis's, and I guess Kawhi Leonard would be that with the Clippers. And if I thought about it long enough, I'd probably come up with one or two more. But there's not a lot of those guys. You get a defender, you get an offensive player. Jaren can be that, and can be that for you guys. He is all defensive player of the year thing wasn't a fluke. He is capable of being that guy if he's playing next to Kessler, and so somebody else is helping clog the lane, and he's free to he can be more of a free safety and pick his spots.
This is I'm just asking you to speculate here. We won't hold you to it, but what do you think the market is for Walker Kessler right now in terms of not necessarily years, but amount per year?
That's a really good question. Because of the injuries, obviously goes down, and restricted free agency is a whole nother. It's a loser for the players and a winner for the teams. Both you saw it at the trade deadline, but you saw it last summer too with Kuminga and others. It's a rough place for players to be. And that said, low 20s.
Okay.
Like he's a starter level money kind of guy, I think. So 20, can you get him for $4 and maybe a little $4.90?
Yeah,
something like that.
I think the Jazz would do cartwheels if they were able to get that number for him.
Yeah, exactly. It might be higher. The thing is, certain young centers are in demand, and there's certain teams really looking for guys who can play that role, including one down the coast. So somebody could come in and try to poach him with a bigger number. Let's be blunt. If he's healthy, he'd look great in Boston. He'd look great in a lot of places. And it's possible somebody comes in with some cap space and tries to poach him.
It only takes one team to blow the whole thing up, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, but we also saw, like I said, last summer, teams are really hesitant to do that right now. And this is going to be a fascinating offseason. Kessler is one of the examples of what I think is going to be one of the more interesting off seasons in terms of what guys get in a apron world where, man, 3 years ago, Jalen Duren is a no-question max guy in Detroit. He's an all-star now. He's a big defender. Is he max? Do you really have to max him out? Do you give him the full 25%? Can you get him to take a little less? Let alone the Brandon Ingrams and Davis and Trae Youngs of the world, like older guys. It's going to be interesting to see what guys get because teams are so. I mean, there's only 7 teams into the tax this year. Teams are really backing off spending.
So your top 4 in the West right now, Oklahoma City, San Antonio, Denver, and Houston. Just because that's the top 4 doesn't mean that's necessarily the 4 best teams in the West. If you were to rank them right now as the likelihood of winning a championship, obviously Oklahoma City's number 1, Denver 2, but then what do you do with San Antonio and Houston there?
That's a really good point. I would probably still put San Antonio. Houston's lack of ball handling outside of KD, their crunch time offense, they miss Fred VanVleet so much. And now they don't have Steven Adams in there. I would put San Antonio third, even though I think they're going to learn some hard playoff lessons with a young team and start to figure out what they need. I think Detroit's kind of in the same boat, right? The young team, let's see what happens. And they're in the East, so maybe they make it through. But if not, they learn what they need to go out and try to find exactly at the trade deadline. So I think I'd still rather be them right now than Houston, where Houston, if they get healthy again next season, you're back. But their problem is they went with Kevin Durant, and they're already all in, right? Like they are already all in, and then they didn't do anything at the trade deadline, which was kind of interesting.
So I've always said that I think Salt Lake City is a Jazz town, not necessarily an NBA town, meaning that I could walk down the street, pull somebody aside and say, hey, do you like the Jazz? They're like, oh, yeah, I'm a diehard fan. And I'd say, okay, who's the number 1 seed right now if the playoffs were to start in the Eastern Conference? And they'd be like, Boston, maybe the Knicks.
Yeah.
I don't know if a lot of people really, truly understand that Detroit has a 5.5-game lead on the one spot in the East. Are you buying stock in the Pistons?
Also, the best fighters in the league. We saw that last night.
That was going to be my follow-up question, too, yes.
In this East, yes. I think that they are the team for the long term. I think they are a player away. In fact, I was and I know Zach Lowe had put this out there, who thought, man, if I were them, I would have called about Lauri Markkanen. And maybe they did. Maybe it probably went nowhere. But that's exactly the kind of player they need. They need one more shot creator who can space. They need shooting. They need something on the wing. They're still a little deficient in some places, and I just think when they get to the playoffs this year, I probably still trust New York more just because they're kind of gritty and tough and have been there. And even with all the flaws on that roster, I trust them a little more right now. But Detroit's good. If I can hold that stock for a year or two, I'm absolutely in.
So, I do games for Utah State, so obviously I've got a soft spot for Sam Merrill. I called every play of his in college. So I keep a close eye on the Cavs because of that. The Harden thing just didn't make a lot of sense now that you see a little bit of sample size. Do you like that trade now?
I like it for them in the short term in this sense. They were getting nothing out of Darius Garland. And for his sake, I hope he gets healthy and gets back right. But you've got a 26-year-old two-time All-Star and you're just willing to bail. That concerns me about what they know or what they think's really going to happen long term. And they bring in a guy in James Harden who, look, he's gonna. Jarrett Allen is a big winner out of this. When Evan Mobley gets healthy, they're bigs. Like Harden's still a really good passer.
Yeah,
really knows how to run the pick and roll. They're finding some comfort zones early on offense, and I think they're better with him. I think they're a bigger threat with him. That said, Donovan Mitchell has his own share of playoff blunders, and James Harden has a litany of them. And it just, I couldn't pick them to come out of the East just because they're going to get to the second round, and I don't know that I trust them. I can still pick on James Harden on defense, and can Jarrett Allen and Evan Mobley clean that up behind him enough to make it all work? So I like them, and in that East they've got a chance, but I don't know that do you trust them in the playoffs?
No, I do not. Not at all. And I'm still trying to wrap my brain around, you got two hungry mouths there in Harden and Donovan Mitchell, and I just don't know how that coexists.
Especially long-term under pressure, right? Like it's looked pretty good through the two-game honeymoon, but what happens when they really do get into some serious games and get into the playoffs? And man, Mitchell wants to be that guy, and Harden wants to be that guy, and they play such radically different styles that I'm like meshing it in the playoffs is harder. It's a little easier during the regular season because one of their issues was that their offense dropped off when Mitchell was out, and now you can stagger those guys. And Harden will happily tell you he is the system. He is the system unto himself. So if he can make that work, it works during the regular season. We'll see how it works in the playoffs.
How many games are we going to see guys get missing because of this fight last night?
Beef Stew is going to get a handful. Silver's always been light on this stuff, but I think especially I'd say Stewart left the bench to jump in the middle of this, and he's been like, was it eight times? 4 times just for fights. He's been suspended, and like 8 suspensions overall. He's going to get, I think, at least 3 games, maybe 4 or 5, and then I think you're going to get 1 or 2 for everybody else. But there were legitimate punches thrown in that. Like it started out as Duran kind of shoves Abate in the face, but it went into full blown. Let's throw blows. Miles Bridges jumps into the mix. Yeah, that whole thing is going to be interesting to see where they come down, because this is, it's not the Malice in the Palace, but it's as big a fight as we've seen in the league for a while, and I'm curious how hard they come down to stomp this, because Silver's always been a little soft, I think, on suspensions in his era, but I'm not sure it's going to happen this time. They should send a message.
I'm always surprised because when actually punches are thrown, because NBA guys are, let's be honest, they'll yeah. Puff out the chest, but nobody actually really wants to throw a fist. And to see some actually get thrown was a bit surprising for sure. Hey, LeBron went after his team. They lost Oklahoma City. He says, hey, we're not a title team. That's a championship team. We're not a title team. Obviously, I think he's right. And I appreciate the self-acknowledgement on where your team's at right now. But how does that go over in that locker room?
I don't think that badly, because I think they recognize it. I think it's funny, just being out here in SoCal, Laker fans have come to a recognition a while ago that, hey, we're good. Like, we've got Luka, and especially when Reeves is healthy, they got Austin Reeves back. Like, we're good, but make the playoffs, win 2 games in the first round good. Not good. And not the kind of good they want to be. And I don't think it's going to play too poorly with his teammates, because I don't think anybody sees that coming for them. And LeBron has reached I don't care what everybody thinks, phase of his career, so he can kind of get away with this. But that's another team that's going to be. They're going to shake things up in the offseason. And if you saw the story this week, and I'd heard this before, it's not just going to be, they're going to tweak the roster and try to get guys who are better fits with Luka. That is a thin front office in terms of how many players or people work in basketball operations. One of the thinnest scouting staffs in the league, which you wouldn't think with the Lakers. And I think that's one thing you're going to see Mark Walter do for whatever you think of what he did with the Dodgers. And he spent on the, not just buying free agents, spent on the infrastructure, spent on coaches. They have a really good farm system now. I think you're going to see that. I think you're going to see him build the infrastructure around the Lakers. You can't buy players the same way, but them actually having a scouting department would be that'd be a nice step forward.
Well, and it's interesting because people think the Lakers and they think tons of money. And that's the case now, but people didn't really understand. The buses weren't, they were cash poor. Now they made out like a bandit on the sale of the thing, but they had to run that thing pretty lean.
They did have to run it, and they sold pieces of it. But the team also had to turn a profit, because that was the family business, right? It's not a situation where we can, and granted, you can fix the numbers however you want to fix the numbers in a lot of these things and accounting on these, hey, well, you have to own the building too, but we can do that. You can fudge the numbers in some ways, but they had to make a profit. They had to pay for their bills. They couldn't do what a Steve Ballmer can do, which is, we lost $100 million this year. All right.
Yeah.
Whatever.
All right.
What, or whatever, or 10 million or whatever, they couldn't go down the same road. So no, their operations on some end were they were really good forward facing. They were really good with players, but and treating them well. And look, they did spend on trying to keep the infrastructure, like in terms of like, hey, we've got all the latest sports medicine stuff, but they didn't have a lot of sports medicine people on the roster. They just spend on the other stuff. So yeah, now I think now you're going to start to see them spend like, man, if you're the richest team in the league, act like it. So
yeah.
Go ahead. Like, you might as well.
Kurt, always a pleasure. Thanks for your time as always. And let's do it again next week.
I look forward to it, my man. Take care.
You got it. Kurt Helin, NBC Sports, ProBasketballTalk.com, right here on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
This guy actually has friends.
Nice.
This is Scotty G and Friends on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
All right, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Time to catch up with one of our favorites, NFL sports betting writer for Yahoo Sports, Frank Schwab, joins us. Frank, how are you doing?
Doing good. How about you?
Good. So was the Super Bowl for you boring, or was it just very calculated in how, and you could see maybe the game within the game on what this coaching staff and especially these defenses were trying to accomplish?
Yeah, I mean, look, I hate to say it was boring. It's still a Super Bowl. It's still fun to see, teams emerge and strategies and all that, but it wasn't exactly exciting. Like, it wasn't one of the best Super Bowls I've seen. Wasn't the worst either. So, I respect it from just the defensive play calling of the Seahawks was so impressive. Mike McDonald is just, I mean, when he was hired and people called him the defensive McVay, I mean, he kind of like, okay, come on, but he really is. Like, he's just brilliant on defense. And you could see it in this game. They knew where to attack. They knew how to attack. They had the Patriots just swimming. They could not protect whatsoever. So a lot of respect to what Seattle did all season. Like, we kept saying, oh, there's no great team, there's no great team, there's no great team. Well, you get to the end of it, and the Seahawks went 17-3, and their 3 losses were by 9 combined points. I mean, pretty dominant. Not the typical elite quarterback, ton of offensive points, all that, but just a good, solid team that had a really, one of those defenses we'll look back on and say, yeah, the 2002 Buccaneers and the 2000 Ravens and the 2015 Broncos. I mean, they'll be in that conversation. They were that good all year.
Was Sam Darnold just the second coming of Trent Dilfer in that game, or do you feel like he deserves a little bit more credit than maybe he's getting?
Oh, a lot more credit. See, I hate this because people will be like, oh, look at he was terrible in the Super Bowl. One game before that, he threw for 346 yards and 3 touchdowns to beat the Rams. Like, what are we doing here? What are we doing? It's just, here's what it is. And this is the honest truth, and people out there need to look in the mirror because this is you, if you're still criticizing Sam Darnold. You don't want to admit you're wrong. You don't want to admit you're wrong about Sam Darnold. We dug in so hard on Sam Darnold being a bust that people do not want to admit they're wrong. And a guy who throws for 346 and 3 touchdowns and no interceptions in an NFC Championship game, you can therefore just turn it on again in the Super Bowl and say, "I'll see, Sam Darnold stinks. I told you." Like, no, he doesn't. He has played. Let me do the math real quick right here. He's played 38 games over the last 2 seasons. 35 of those have been excellent. I mean, at some point, is he Patrick Mahomes? Is he Joe Burrow? No, he's not. He's not that guy, but he's a perfectly good quarterback who deserves everything coming to him. Did he have a great Super Bowl? No, he didn't. But he that ring is going to fit pretty well on him because he's earned it.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And the interesting thing, everybody's been going young and offensive coaches. Does what we've seen from the Seattle staff, do people now take a step back and say, no, maybe we need to look at more defensive coaches?
Yeah, and I think you're still going to always have teams that want offensive coaches. Because, look, the Titans are a good example of a team that's got a conundrum coming. They hired Robert Saleh, who I thought was a great hire. I really, in a vacuum, I thought Saleh, anybody gets a pass from me if you struggled with the Jets, because the Jets are a tire fire. They're just a terrible organization that nobody can succeed at. So he struggled with the Jets, but I think it makes him stronger as a head coach the second time around. Now, the problem is he hires Brian Daboll as his offensive coordinator. If Brian Daboll has a great year developing Cam Ward, if Cam Ward becomes a MVP candidate like Drake May did in the second year, somebody hires Wade Daboll, and he'll go to another offensive coordinator. If that offensive coordinator does well, that offensive coordinator gets hired away. This is what happened with the Buccaneers for a few years, right, with Canales and Cohen. So I think teams want that continuity for the quarterback, so they're always going to be looking for the Ben Johnson type. But I do think, you got to open your mind and say, maybe there's not a million Ben Johnsons out there. Maybe we got to go find the next Mike McDonald instead. And, you saw a lot of defensive coaches get hired this cycle, and I think the tide is shifting. There's still a lot of value in the guys who can slow down those great offenses. And, I think that other teams will open their mind and say, hey, if we can't get that, next brilliant offensive mind as a head coach, getting a brilliant defensive mind is not that bad.
Are you surprised that Vance Johnson didn't get a opportunity, or does that era as the head coach of the Broncos still working against him?
Yeah, I think it is. It was so unimpressive that you just wonder if Vance Joseph is one of those guys who just kind of profiles as a really good coordinator and not a great head coach. And I don't know who in this cycle he would have gotten a job over necessarily. You could argue maybe Mike LaFleur. I wasn't jumping up and down for that hire. It was fine. I get it. The guy coach under McVay, you always want that. But I think that he would have to have it. It's hard because he wasn't in a great situation when he got that job. I mean, the quarterback with the situation was just terrible. So, this is just the truth. Black head coaches have had trouble getting second chances. It has happened, but it's tougher. And you feel for Vance Joseph because he's probably sitting there saying, what could I have done better, really? I was stuck with a really bad situation and a bad roster that first time in Denver. He's rehabilitated himself through a couple of great defenses with the Broncos here the last couple of years, and he can't get another shot. And I think that that's frustrating, not just for him, but for a lot of black coaches who look at look at them being shut out at 10 openings this year and say, what do we really need to do? What can we do to make this situation better for us so we're not going 0 for 10? I know that's frustrating for everybody involved who wants to see that change.
By the way, apologies, Vance Joseph, not Vance Johnson, for the Three Amigo reference from back in the
Ricky Nattiel is going in next.
Mark Jackson's going to be a great head coach too, I'm sure. Yeah. Hey, when you look at, speaking of the Broncos, with Vance coming back next year as a defensive coordinator, a healthy Bo Nix, in your power rankings going into next year, how high would you put the Broncos?
Yeah, and I just published those. So I had the Broncos third, I believe, behind the Seahawks and Rams, who I think deserve those top two spots going into next year. And a big reason why is, I think probably people have heard this by now, the highest paid player on the Denver Broncos each of the last two seasons has been Russell Wilson. That comes off the books. And if we know anything about Sean Payton's history, Sean Payton teams spend in free agency. They get out the credit card. They don't care about future cap hits. They spend like they're, a 22-year-old on spring break. And it's just, and I expect the Broncos to be really, really aggressive this offseason with Russell Wilson's number off the books. All of a sudden, could they go and sign a Breece Hall? Could they go and sign an Alec Pierce? If you get some offensive firepower with that offense, I think they just lack it a little bit. Like RJ Harvey wasn't what they wanted him to be, and J.K. Dobbins is fine, but he's always injured. The receivers are solid, but Cortland Sutton's probably best as a number 2, and I'm not sure there's another great option in that offense. If you can go spend, not like the Patriots did this past off season, but spend a significant amount to add a couple pieces, which I definitely think they're going to do. I mean, last offseason they were aggressive. They got Ingram and Greenlaw and Huffanega. They're going to be even more aggressive this year, more money to spend. So I think the Broncos are going to be in great shape coming into next year. But I'll say this, I think the Chargers are really good too. The AFC West is going to be really interesting. The Chargers get those offensive tackles back. And I think the Chargers have the 6th most cap space in the NFL, something crazy like that. So I think the AFC West is just going to be a beast next year. I think it's going to be really, really fun to watch.
How much, because he was up for, it seemed like, some head coaching jobs, but Mike McDaniel's the OC there. Yeah,
it helps tremendously. I'll say this, if Jesse Minter would have come back somehow, which was never realistic because he's such a hot name in the coaching world, that if Minter would have come back, I probably would have picked the Chargers are ready to win next season's Super Bowl.
Okay.
To get McDaniel in there for the offense, I think it's a huge upgrade. He's going to have to, adapt and fit with what they have. But, Justin Herbert's such a good place to start with that. Their defense still has a lot of pieces. I wonder about the coordinator. We just don't have a lot of, he doesn't have a long NFL resume. He was one of the directional Michigan schools last year coaching defense. That doesn't mean he can't do it, but it's a risk. if that defense plays anywhere near where it played this year, I think the Chargers, really good. McDaniel's a big part of that.
Is there any reason that you believe Clint Kubiak can change things in Vegas, or is it just another long list of coaches that are going to struggle there?
Yeah, man, it's tough. I mean, it's from the top down. It's just been a bad franchise, and it's been a bad franchise for most of the last 40 years. And that's not easy to turn around. Now, I mean, the biggest as anything, you're drafting a quarterback number 1 overall. He needs to hit. If Mendoza can carry on what he did in college to the pros, I mean, almost like Joe Burrow, like that type of guy who was just unbelievable in college and then just does it in the pros too. It changes the whole outlook of the franchise. Look, the Houston Texans 3 years ago were one of the worst franchises in the NFL. They were maybe the worst. They were absolutely positively awful. They make a great head coach hire. C.J. Stroud, I know he's been up and down, but he was really good as a rookie. And everything changes. Your entire outlook changes. Same thing can happen with the Raiders. If Kubiak's the right guy, if Mendoza's the right guy, then it doesn't. The last 40 years doesn't matter. You can turn things around that quickly in the NFL. So I would bet against it just because the Raiders have been that bad. But there's hope. There's hope. And there's more hope than there is with a 74-year-old Pete Carroll and a 35-year-old Geno Smith. Let's put it that way.
In the scouts that you talk to and people around the league, are they mostly positive on Mendoza, or is it kind of a wait and see?
I think Mendoza's not viewed as like a Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Drake May level guy. He a lot of that. I don't want to say system quarterback because at some point everybody's a system quarterback, other than like 5 guys on the planet. So, but he seems more system-ish than the rest. But I mean, all the intangibles he brings to the table, people like that. I mean, he has enough. I mean, he doesn't have a howitzer of an arm like a Justin Herbert, but he's got enough of an arm. He does everything well enough. And at some point, when you go 16-0 at Indiana or 15-0 or whatever they win, I mean, that says a lot. And I think that just what he's put on film is pretty darn good. And I think definitely worth the Raiders taking the first pick. I mean, you gotta swing at some point, and I think that's a perfectly reasonable gamble for them to make. He's done it in college. You got to see if that can translate to the pros, but I don't see there being any reason it can't. Like, do I think he's ever going to be MVP of the league? Probably not. But the Super Bowl champions have a quarterback who probably isn't in anybody's top 10. So you can win in different ways. You just need a good, solid quarterback, and I think he could definitely be that.
Before we let you go, I understand there's not a lot of people out there that actually feel sorry for Bill Belichick, but not going to the Hall of Fame after what he's been able to accomplish, is that something that will lead to some changes with voting?
It should. The Hall of Fame voting's been bad for a while. Like, I hate to say it because I respect a lot of guys in that room, but it's been broken since Terrell Owens didn't get in either of his first 2 opportunities. Like, that was just voters saying, we don't like you, and we're going to punish you. And I wonder if the same thing happened with Belichick. All of us wonder that. I mean, Belichick wasn't the cuddliest, friendliest guy with the media. I mean, there's no other reason he's not in the Hall of Fame. You could not give me one football reason he's not in the Hall of Fame. Those Spygate, I don't care. What are we doing here? Come on. Like, that's so ridiculous to think that that's a reason. I just think that I don't know if the Hall of Fame, look, everybody's had their own theories on what happened and the voting process or whatever. I just wonder if voters, because they got a free pass for T.O., because T.O. is not like, I don't know why, but they got a pass, I think, for T.O. They didn't get ripped as much as they should have for T.O. not getting in his first 2 times. That they just didn't realize the blowback here. They didn't realize that this was such an egregiously bad decision that it was going to be like, hey, we might need to shake it up and get rid of some of these voters. Like, I don't think they ever saw that coming. And so they were like, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I haven't had anybody say this. I don't know this for a fact. But I think it's possible that a lot of those guys were like, yeah, screw Bill Belichick. He wasn't nice to us. We're not going to vote for him. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, the entire world is mad at us now for this. We screwed up. I really like it. You wonder, because again, you cannot make an argument why Bill Belichick's on the Hall of Fame. You can't. No. You literally cannot make an argument. And for them to hold him out and, you can only vote for so many guys and you got to get Roger Craig in because he's bad. I don't care. Any excuse you can make is a bad one because any theory that leads to Bill Belichick wasn't a first ballot Hall of Famer tells me it was wrong. Like it just is it's inexcusable. And I think they kind of, I honestly don't think they expected this kind of blowback, or I just think that maybe they didn't think that 11 guys wouldn't, maybe I'm going to be the one to not vote for Bill Belichick, but 10 other guys won't. And then it just bit them because it's probably the worst Hall of Fame vote I've ever seen in any sport. Like, I mean, we can argue about Barry Bonds and all that, but Bill Belichick not going in on a first ballot is the worst Hall of Fame vote I can ever remember. And I think that there should be some accountability here. Like, we don't even know who didn't vote for him, and I think that's ridiculous. If you are part of that group that votes for Hall of Fame, your vote should be public. Yeah, let's get it out there. You should not be doing this in private whatsoever.
Is that once you become one of the voters, do you have it for life until you give it up, or what is there like a term? How does that? I don't even know how that works.
No, there's no term. I don't know exactly. I couldn't tell you like the inner workings of how that group gets turned over when it does. But most of the guys in that room have been in that room for a long time, and it doesn't change very often. So I don't know exactly the process as far as changing voters or moving voters, any of that. I just know that usually once guys are on that panel, they stay there for a long, long time.
Yeah, yep. Well, Frank, we appreciate it as always. Thanks for your time, and let's do it again here soon.
Absolutely, I appreciate it.
You got it. Frank Schwab, Yahoo Sports, right here on just does a tremendous job covering the NFL and just does it, frankly, better than everybody else. All right, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Coming up in the 2 o'clock hour, we continue on another busy day. Patrick Kinahan will join us at 2:05. We'll chat with him, get his thoughts on the Utah Jazz. Was he bored by the Super Bowl? It's just been a long time since we've talked to PK. So we'll hit him up coming up at 2:05 right here on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.